We are Clark and Joyce Lassie, global goers, called by Jesus and sent by New Heights Church to the north part of Uganda, an area of that country that has been devastated for decades by war, disease, and poverty.
One of the personal desires that God has really stirred in my heart is to figure out how we can help the Ugandans learn how to incorporate business ideas and principles in order to help them reach a level of self-sustenance that's beyond just survival mode. Joyce has been working with some of the prostitute women that we've gotten to know over the last several months. And we've begun to realize that if we could provide an opportunity for them to be a part of a business that would begin to generate enough income for them that we could maybe free some of them from the context of prostitution in which they find themselves and which they so desperately want to escape from.
50 to 80% of the population of our area in northern Uganda are unemployed. 80 to 90% are not able to read or write proficiently in any language. Furthermore, because of the rampant poverty that afflicts this part of the country and because of the relatively high cost of the traditional Ugandan educational system, most of the population of northern Uganda will never have the opportunity to progress and further their formal education to any higher level, much less to any degree. Women are by far less likely than men to further their education, and women who have been forced into prostitution by their circumstances are the least likely of the female part of the population to do so. So it was abundantly logical to us that vocational training would be the fastest way to help these women find their way out of the deep ditches of illiteracy and poverty they find themselves stuck in. So we began to search for the right place to start. God faithfully led us and provided the resources for a piece of property consisting of about 11 acres, nestled along a small tributary to the mighty Nile River, and about a 20-minute walk from the town center where these women live and work in the prostitution trade.
The property was well suited to the vision he was birthing in our hearts, but it was completely undeveloped. So once the property was purchased, the task of developing it got quickly underway. But the process was painfully slow by our Western standards. First, we needed to make a way onto the property. This became a great picture of what a vocational training ministry would be for these women. Their way out, their exodus from the economic, cultural, and spiritual strongholds that were keeping them in bondage. While the 75-yard driveway was being developed entirely with hose, shovels, and wheelbarrows, a borehole was being drilled, again manually, with a method we had learned in South Texas. After 8 days of intense work, the drilling team reached 45 feet, and the borehole began producing water. The water it produces is now of drinkable quality, and as such is quite useful to the nearby community as well. Following the borehole, an experimental fish pond was dug, which happened to be over an artesian spring, which produces menial use water at the phenomenal rate of more than a gallon every 15 seconds. In order to make the most effective use of these two sources of water which God has provided for us, we'd like to construct 2 elevated water storage tanks on different parts of the property. One tower would make menial use water available for such applications as irrigation. The other would store potable water. Each would cost about $4,000. Another of the exciting provisions God has made for us is a block-making machine which utilizes a compression mechanism to press locally available materials, including cement, into air and water-cured interlocking blocks that fit together like Legos without the use of mortar. When the operation is in full swing, we're producing about 400 blocks per day, and have begun utilizing the blocks we're making in the construction that is taking place as the project continues its development. Because this system produces very strong and cost-effective building materials, we plan to use this block both in all future construction on the property, but also to help financially support the project by selling these blocks to other builders in the region. Perhaps the most inspiring development yet really begins to bring this vision full circle. Last September, God led us to hire the first 4 women from the Prostitution Association that Joyce had befriended. Initially, the work they did was entry-level, unskilled labor like clearing land for gardening and other uses, and carrying water for use in the block-making process. They worked diligently and joyfully, also eagerly learning biblical and spiritual truth from the discipleship curriculum we utilize called The Story of God's Family, a commitment we require of all those who work for the Exodus Project. And then an amazing thing began to happen. As these hard-working young women watched the block-making and construction take place, they began to express strong interest in participating in it and learning it. So we began to teach them. And as we did, we began to realize that these women could quickly learn enough about both these processes that they could become Uganda's first all-female construction team, able to build residences and small commercial use buildings from start to finish. We still plan to construct a facility for a cafe with guest rooms and classroom space as well, which will be the project with which we enhance their learning in construction. After its completion, the cafe and guest house will itself become a place of employment and learning, but will also become a revenue-producing entity that will help financially sustain the Exodus project. A facility like this would provide a very well-suited context in which many of these women could be empowered to establish themselves in wholesome, productive, and transformational places of business, and to become mature and biblically grounded spiritual leaders as well.
The gospel will only travel across a relational bridge that is strong enough to bear its weight. And so really, before we can even begin to communicate the truth of the gospel, often it's necessary to build a relationship of trust with that person.
One of the rewarding aspects of life for me in Uganda has been getting to know and meeting with some of the women in Karuma, a small town near Restoration Gateway, women who have given themselves to prostitution as a means of survival. They desperately want to get out of that lifestyle, but they see no hope. They see no way for them to provide for their children or for themselves.
My name is Alum Dokas. With me, I'm struggling hard, but my capital is in my hands.
She heads up the organization that the prostitutes have formed for themselves, an organization not to promote themselves, but rather to support themselves. She's become a dear friend to me. She has a shop in town where she does some hair braiding, so I find when I go into the market, I can stop and see Dorcas and get to visit with several of the women in that organization.
Joyce has an incredible gift of encouragement, and she's able to speak such positive and encouraging messages of hope into the lives of people when she shares with them and gets to know them.
Joyce, I met her when we were on the meeting there. I was so glad at that day. She became my friend that day. She's trying to help me in any way. She always come and check me how I'm doing in my business.
Through the help of a recent team that was there, we were able to teach them to make headbands, which they were able to sell for a small profit to generate a little income for themselves. And a dream we have is to someday open a restaurant to employ some of the women, to equip them with other means that they would no longer have to live the lifestyle that they so desperately want to dislodge from.
We started to make that group so that we see the way we can change their life by giving them something to do. We sit down, when we sit with her, we share a lot with her, how we could change the life of those women.
On our first day back in Uganda in early September, we began our trek into the heart of the capital city, Kampala, for the usual errands that are necessary upon re-entry here. Exchanging money, a little shopping, and hopefully some internet time. We hadn't driven more than 150 yards out of our hotel gate when our car ended up stuck in this 2-foot deep roadside drainage ditch. With 2 wheels suspended in the filthy water, there was no way we'd be able to drive ourselves out of it. A crowd of Ugandans quickly formed around the car. Needless to say, we were more than a little alarmed, but one of the men purported to be an off-duty police officer and showed me what appeared to be an authentic police identification card. He agreed to stand with Joyce and our luggage near where the car was stuck while I tried to organize some men into a group effort to get the car out. All our efforts fell short, as you can see, but before too long, a truck with a lift crane mounted on its bed stopped, and its driver offered his assistance. With that help, we were able to get the car out of the ditch and back on the road. We couldn't have done it on our own. We needed the help of a whole cast of characters, including the watchful presence of a sincere off-duty police officer. As we contemplated this frustrating start to our first day back in Uganda, the Spirit prompted us to see the whole experience as a powerful object lesson, reminding us of why we are working in this country in the first place. To be a part of a whole cast of characters God is using to help at least some of the many people here who are stuck in their own ditches and are unable, on their own, with their own very limited resources, to climb their way out. We're thrilled by and immensely grateful for the help all of you so faithfully offer to be a part of the team of people God continues to mobilize to bring the good news of the way out, the Exodus, which He has provided for the people of North Uganda through the substitutionary death of His firstborn Son and our oldest brother, Jesus.
You're the God of this city. You're the King of these people. You're the Lord of this nation.